minutes right. Because I'm hoping.
You're all set.
Okay, thank you. So let's stand for the Pledge of Allegiance, please.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Okay, all commissioners are present. And accept and approve with waiver of the reading of the minutes from the July 21st meeting.
Move to accept and approve the waiver of the reading of the minutes for the meeting held on July 21st, 2021.
Thank you. Second?
I'll second that.
Any discussion about the minutes?
Madam Chair, I had requested the minutes to reflect that the adjourning. I stated I wish the minutes to reflect that I requested to be recognized multiple times, and I would request that all commissioners will be treated the same way you treated me, as if that is an appropriate way, Madam Chair. I am speaking of not being recognized. Thank you.
Any other comments about the minutes? Okay, all in favor of accepting the minutes? Opposed? Okay, review and approval of all warrants. Motion, please.
I move to approve the manual warrants of payroll 2127 and 2204J.
And a second.
Second that?
And open it up for discussion about the warrants. Okay, with no questions or discussion, let's go ahead and take a vote. All in favor of accepting the warrants and payroll? Opposed? Maine County Commissioners Association.
It wasn't.
There's no meeting, right?
I would say it does seem like there's some things that are affecting the county that were somewhat championed by the MCCA. And I honestly did not read the details of all of it, but I know one of them was a bill that had passed about raising civil fees. And the quick line I read was that the governor did not reflect that in the budget, so something about how we can't actually raise them to that number, if I'm that wrong.
I send you guys all the update. We can adjust other rates. We're hoping to go in line with what they were adjusting their rates to, because it seemed to balance the market. We haven't had the internal discussion about what to bring forward about the other rates outside of the state rates, but yeah, you're actually right. The governor didn't sign it, therefore it's left to be reconsidered, however that works, assuming next session, but it passed. So there'll be a delay for the state rates, which had some very fair increases for the service in it. So it's unfortunate, but I think it would be because it would affect the finance of Department of Human Services.
Now, is that, when you say state rates, is that a specific class of documents that we're delivering, or is that just what we charge the state?
It's what the state says they're willing to pay to have the service, or we will only pay this.
Is that a significant portion of the revenue?
In this area, and for the purpose of the papers we're serving, I would guess that it is. That adjustment alone was going to significantly bump up our income, even if the numbers maintain low as a result of COVID. For instance, I know I reflect on divorces a lot, but the divorce rate goes from $16 to $40. So I don't know how many divorces there are in Androscoggin County a year, but that's a, what, $24 difference for every service.
There was something else.
Okay. Central Maine Workforce Board. Commissioner Kelly.
I don't have a whole lot. I would just say that the board continues to work with local businesses and they continue to, work to enhance their own programs to assist job seekers who may be having, difficulty exploring their options, providing outreach as well. And they've also been focusing on youth programs. That's all I have at the moment. Nothing new or earth-shattering. Thank you.
And we've added the sheriff's report dispatch update for some questions as you're going to your towns.
Yeah.
I say making the rounds because I have to make the rounds. I guess not everybody has to make rounds like I do, but questions are coming up. And
Yeah, well, pretty much in speaking to Larry this past week, I thought it would be a good idea to, we've given a big piece. I've said there'd be decisions that need to be made, but obviously the more information we can provide, the better decisions you'll make. So in part, I wanted to throw out there the opportunity to, what else more would you need from us that you find helpful in maybe making a decision? Again, understanding we're still in the infancy, but the more things that pop up, the more things we can consider as we meet and look at the potential of this. On another note, I've started to meet with town representatives. Last night, I went with Commissioner Kelly to meet with selectmen in Poland. I had previously met with the town manager and finance people there to explain that how this all came about. The short answer, if Lewis and Auburn were to close their doors, would we provide the service? Brought it to your attention. You said you were interested in at least looking at, with the proposal, having a true regional consolidation for dispatch and 911 services. So in that, we've been meeting, doing our due diligence, looking at all things involved from governance to how it operates, staffing needs, to contractual obligations, basically formatting it of what it would look like in the end. Then we built a budget based on highest potential cost. We brought that to your attention, figuring that would be a major piece of any decisions you'd make and the impact of that, so you'd understand what you're looking at. Made a recommendation, which I explained to the town of Poland last night. My recommendation was go off valuation. There are other options. The feedback I got from the town of Poland selectmen is they're in favor of proposal, they're in favor of the regional consolidation of dispatch and 911 services. They understand it. They would like explored other ways of funding. For instance, maybe, and I'll actually throw in this morning, I spoke to the town manager of Turner. We had a pretty good discussion. I gave him a synopsis of what was happening. We're in the part of just putting information together and doing our due diligence. And he had mentioned partial. I said, I'm an advocate for evaluation because it can't be manipulated. It's, it's how the state does things. And if we're doing it to the entire county, it seems to make sense. But there's per capita fees, which we're using in part now. And he kind of said, well, what about a split? Ironically, the study had recommended splits are an option. I said, those are conversations as we go along. These are commissioner decisions. How that's done, how that's affected, if it's 50% per capita, 50% valuation, those are discussions later on. But I explained to Poland, as I'll explain to Green, Turner, and Leeds, or if you want to when we meet with them. I know Commissioner Ames and Commissioner Christner are also going pretty much the same thing. So while everything is still a work in progress, while we're making positive move forward, while I believe personally it's a good opportunity for the county, the end decisions are yours. The recommendations I can make, sometimes that works, sometimes it doesn't. But I'd also like to know, or give you the opportunity to, is there anything in particular with what you've been presented so far, is there anything more that you can think of that would be helpful for us to keep in mind as we continue to meet and to go, and bring information back for you in order for you to make a decision at some point? I will tell you City of Auburn has contracted a lawyer to look at some of the things, basically union related, at their expense. So we are waiting for information back there, just to make everything can be done legitimately, and we don't want to create any issues. It's part of the consideration to it all. So we're waiting for information back there. Was that just about it, Larry, that we were waiting for? I think that was just about it. And I'm not asking you, for questions tonight. If you want to give them to me at your next meeting, if you have something that's been in the back of your mind, I don't mind, writing it down now. If you want to give me a call, shoot me an email at any point with the same thing, and I'll do like I've always done, or like when certain commissioners have asked me a question, whether it's relevant to you or not, I'll provide you the answers all. But I just wanted to touch base and let you know, don't be afraid to, ask anything. Of course, some of the financial stuff I volunteer Clarice for, but anyway, that's all I got.
Yes, go ahead.
So, what I hear is a lot of, you're meeting with the towns, that this is, I guess getting some of their concerns, but I guess what I'm wondering is how are you going to show the towns that this is a joint effort, and not just the county and two cities working to benefit two cities and one large town?
Well, that's not what we're doing.
Where were the towns brought in at the early beginning of this, and are they being brought in now? Do they all have an equal seat at the table? Or is this just something where the county, Auburn, and Lewiston are meeting, and then this is then being brought out to the towns, here, take this, go with this? Because Lisbon, Lewiston, and Auburn are making out quite well on this financially, and all of the towns, other than that, are getting a significant hit. So I think if you're really gonna justify this to not just the selectmen or select board or council, but to the taxpayer, I think that question really needs to be answered. Were they brought in at the inception? The answer is no. And then also, are they being brought in now? Do they have an equal seat at the table?
Well, actually, you gotta change, how you're looking at it is a little off. We provide a service to 12 communities. We don't to 2. Those 2 are saying, we'd like to close our doors, can you provide us the service? So that's actually the question. What we do from there is we look at, if we were to provide the service for the entire county, as we are a regional communication center, what would that look like, and are the commissioners willing to take that on? I've said as sheriff, where the dispatch center is currently under my administration, I'm willing to do the work. We agreed with Lewis and Auburn, they want to close, they want to make sure their services wouldn't lapse. We want to make sure we weren't taking on certain things. So we've met a lot to get through that. Then we said, all right, what would be useful? Once we figured out how management and staffing would work in right down to the records management system, let's build the budget to bring to the commissioners for their decision making, to help, because that was like the biggest portion of it. And there's a lot of side residual things that need to go along as well. So now that we figured out what the impact would be, it's the perfect time to say, you all represent different areas, and it affects everybody differently. And if you would sit through budget committee meetings with me year after year, the exact argument you're making is the exact argument I face with dealing with the city of Lewiston, Auburn, Lisbon, even to some extent Poland. They're subsidizing our operation now. Actually, it was reflected in the thing saying, can Lewis and Auburn be removed from having to pay taxes towards our communication center, because we're not required to have it. But they can't by law, so they have to pay. So I'm not trying to sell a product. I have a product. I have people that want to use the product. I'm going to tell everybody the reality of it, and they can make up I think it's beneficial. The town manager of Poland and I have had conversations prior to the meeting, and we disagree. I think long range, it's great potential. It costs the state a lot of money to run PSAPs. There's no saying down the road they might want to close more PSAPs. Originally, this county was only supposed to have 1, and it was a political battle that nobody could get over about power and control. Then it became a cost factor. This political backlash to whatever you do, whatever you decide to do, I'm obviously involved in it. It's your decision, so it's a joint effort. But the true burden, if you want to call that, of bearing the expense is your vote. I also look at it as an opportunity to balance the system, so nobody's subsidizing anybody. This is what it costs to run a county function. here's how the funds are raised through valuation. It's a rate that's determined by the state that nobody can manipulate. So therefore, it stops the arguments that I face every year of somebody subsidizing somebody. Unfortunately, the first year you make that adjustment to equalize the market, it will hurt. There's towns that will see substantial increases, I recognize that. And there's cities and towns that are gonna see decreases, which maybe they should have seen 20 years ago. You know, I don't know, they elected not to come on at the time and have their own, so that's a cost borne on them that they chose. This kind of
Are you
leverages it
speaking
up.
of Lewiston and Auburn, or are you speaking of Lisbon? Okay, so they did
Well,
elect.
Lisbon as well.
Okay, so they did elect to, but I would just say that if you're following that line of reasoning, I would figure when you have large numbers of people packed together in tight cities, that they tend to have maybe more potential for friction and then possible incarceration. So some of those costs are borne even by small towns on the flip side of that, so.
Yeah.
Obviously, as you said, I may be wrong in that, but I would respectfully say, no, you're wrong. You can say I'm wrong. I
Okay,
can say you're wrong.
we're gonna move on to, this is a question time, and we're gonna move on to Commissioner Michaels has a question.
Oh, I thought I was passing it off to you.
Oh, no, you can ask your own question.
Is, some of the small towns are gonna have a expense increase based on the formula the way it is now. Isn't there anybody that can crunch some numbers and tweak it a little bit and figure out a formula where they're
Well,
break
in
even or something?
now, see, there's, and I've read the report, I was reluctant to show it because the market has changed. Like, for instance, after the last one was done, Livermore Falls closed their dispatch. So they experienced a savings there. They're not gonna see the savings twice, actually, they see an increase. But, you know, your avenues historically are valuation, per capita, and the worst that Terry could tell you, and Larry could too, that I actually argue with this, like, I would never recommend going for per call. Because, you know, you talk about the political backlash on, I'd say, fixing this one, you know, for the future. If you were doing it per call, those numbers fluctuate so much year to year that you'd be dealing with political backlash constantly, because it's not predictable. We looked at the numbers from 911 calls last year to 2008, and one community experienced the same drop, a significant drop. Well, it still costs the same to run your operation with employees, with light bills, heating, and all that. Therefore, the cost is gonna get brought on someplace else, and you'll be constantly having to adjust the rate, adjust the billing. You know, and I explained that to the selectmen last night, so I think they kinda got off it. But in the 2000, it is an option that somebody else will have to manage and figure out and do the accounting for. But that's an option. You have the per capita, which is based on population. Those numbers change with every census report. In there, they also said you could do combination, part valuation, part per capita, part valuation, part per call. I'm just, you know, I'll make recommendations to you, and I realize I'm choosing the simple arithmetic route, but it has consequences, and it's your decision. But I would highly advise you that it would be very problematic if we would go to the call volume billing. And that's about all I can say there. That'll be your decision at the time, if that time comes. And if it's something you want to consider, I don't know how we'd start looking at it, but Larry and I could figure out something, I guess, with Clarice's expertise.
I sat through a meeting.
Oh, wait,
there were some
hold on.
questions. Okay, yeah, go
On
ahead.
that,
No,
I'm sorry.
Finish, please.
Regardless, here's the thing that study proved. Regardless of the formula you use, the same four communities were saving money. So it didn't matter which formula you use, it changed the amount that those communities were saving. And that's why I tried pulling in a nice way, your complaint about doing this is the same complaint existing communities have now. So, and I do get it. I mean, I understand it's gonna be a tough one to knock, but there'll be a savings experience for those communities, it looks like, regardless of whatever the formula is. I'm sorry.
Thanks.
There was some questions about usage, and I think there was some misconceptions about usage. I sort of sat quiet. I guess my question to you is, those reports that we get, is there any part of that is confidential or should not be discussed?
any
When
kind
we
of-
get the reports of
The reports we
usage?
make to you are public.
Okay,
Things we can't include and we stopped doing was like arrest logs, because you can't, once it's on the internet, you can't wipe it off. Jeff, what are some of the other things we don't provide? It's actually the personal information of the people, because
Right.
once it's on the internet, it stays with them, whether they were acquitted, their charges were dropped, but whatever we provide to you is public information.
Yeah, I have a couple towns, I think, that would be surprised at their usage, but, so.
And they did bring up the jail thing last night, and I have a different opinion. You know, there's state laws that people are in here violating. You have service center communities where people come here to work or maybe participate in illegal activity. They're not necessarily Lewiston Auburn residents, I can tell you that. But, you know, the comment was made, well, the jail, the makeup of the jail is all Lewiston Auburn arrests. Well, majority are, but that doesn't mean that's where they live, you know. And again, it's not Lewiston Auburn ordinances they're violating, but that's always the counter we deal with at budget time. It's not the first time. I knew it was gonna come up in Poland. You know, somebody's always feeling like they're getting the short end of the stick, whether it's the dispatch, whether it's funding patrol, whether it's funding the jail. It's taxes, it's government. It doesn't make anybody feel warm and fuzzy, so.
Any other questions that would help you as you go to your towns and have discussions with your towns about this? Yes.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I feel that along with addressing the financial aspect, I think that, you know, having something in black and white in layman's terms, like what are the pros, like what are the cons? You know, will, you know, Sally Smith from Mechanic Falls have, have to be put on hold when she's calling because her, 69-year-old husband has had a heart attack and she's waiting for an ambulance? Will she, things that, people have to deal with when they're, in crisis and they're calling, for emergency services. Will response times be faster? What can people expect? What can, what are the like real life advantages that people can expect to reap from this, other than just the finances?
Well, and you saw last night where I tried to say, hey, there's some benefits to this. That really wasn't the interest.
Yeah. But I mean, I think that, that the taxpayer, the community member, I think that that's something that they would want to see.
Yeah. No, and I have no problem putting that out, in a format, because there are some benefits. I discussed them some last night, but it was more. And then I asked them, are you against the proposal? And they all know, they understand it. Because one of the benefits we never discussed is when you look at reductions of PSAPs and how they're run now, the state of Maine could have one. They'd probably never be able to staff it from what we've seen, but it literally could be all done in Portland or all done in Augusta, and that could have been their ultimate goal at one time. So there are, those kinds of things. If you're providing a regional service to your whole region, it gives you probably some staying power, which is something we haven't really touched on. But as time goes on, I'm sure more questions will come up. I just wanted to let you know, if you have questions, let me know, because I'd love to give you the answers for you.
Commissioner Madore?
Thank you. I think this is really, when we talk about it, I think we need to talk all about that it's about improving the service, what already great service that Antrim County does offer. It's about getting economies of scale for purchasing and hiring, and it's about fairness. That's what it's about. And I would caution anyone to really quote many of the numbers, because I think I don't feel like I don't want to set expectations exactly. I think the truth of it is that there will be a shift, but I would caution anyone to use any of the numbers that have been presented exactly or from old studies, because I don't think, to some extent, don't interrupt me. We're not going to know until we're going to know about the numbers. Learn some respect,
No,
Isaiah.
let me ask you a question. What issue of decorum is being violated? That's what a point of order is there's an issue of decorum. What issue of decorum has the commissioner violated? Not what, that you want to argue with him, what issue of decorum?
Madam Chair, I didn't even argue with him.
Okay,
My
then
point
let's let him
no,
finish.
please allow me to explain. You have not
Do
given me
you
the
have a
opportunity.
point of order?
Yes.
Okay,
Yes, Madam Chair.
what point of decorum is being violated?
The point of decorum is that you have told me to keep it to one thing, and now we're talking about cautioning commissioners about expenditures and not questions to the.
Okay, so you want to argue with him?
No,
You'll
I
have
am
time to do
arguing
that.
that it is not appropriate to allow him to speak to the entire commission when we're supposed to be asking the sheriff questions so that we can go back to our towns. There's a big difference, and you know it, Madam Chair.
Okay.
Excuse me,
Finish
Madam
your-
Chair,
fin-
the gentleman has no right to say that you know anything. He has no right to read your mind, I'm checking that.
Then it's
Do you
obvious.
wanna
Let's see,
finish
because the
your,
commissioner-
finish your sentence, please?
My next thing is, I think we should be steadfast about using the overall tax to fund this. It is the equalizer, it is the easiest thing, and to the point of recall, we need stability in the funding of this, or else it will be more difficult to fund the government and just generally. Having the stability of funding is very important, and also having it equalized with using the tax rates is the best way to fund the government. But when we talk about this, I think we need to talk about that it's about service. It's about increasing the great service that we already have, and that is by unifying under one umbrella.
Madam Chair, where is this a question?
Why
Where is this a
couldn't I
question?
ask you the same thing when
I've
you were
asked,
making
no,
your
I made
comments?
several questions.
Any other questions for the sheriff?
Madam Chair. Sheriff, how do I go back to my towns, seeing as you stated that Lewiston and Auburn chose originally to not join into the Androscoggin 911? How do I go back to my towns and then say that it's fair for them now that they're losing money, to want to join back in?
Well, it's always been here for them. I mean, we provide a regional service. We're a government agency. I don't think we can deny that service to a town or municipality. And I'm not speaking by legalese here, but it would seem to be common sense that if you're a county entity, regional service, and you offer or provide a service, I can't deny it to any community in there. So there's one. The history is well documented from the time this came out. I mean, there was a lot of politics involved when the state made it. I wouldn't know where you'd find the information, but like there's one of your communities that's like, they looked at it and they basically said, we understand what's going on. We're just happy that the county was able to maintain their PSAP. We're happy that this is going towards being under the county, not a quasi-municipal or some sort of governmental agency. They understand the cost, but they feel the security of getting over the financial hump. So it is beneficial, and it's something that they just have to come to terms with and figure out in their budgets. But I wouldn't know. Marty, would you know where they could get the information about when this all started back in the early 2000s? Maybe Google? Maybe the Sun Journal? They
I
have
started in
news.
'95, and this was already well underway.
Yeah.
So I can tell you that there was a massive reduction in PSAPs in the state several years ago. If you want to talk about reduction in service, that's the way to get a bad reduction in service, with the reduction of PSAPs.
I think the reduction of PSAPs, when some were actually forced to close, that was around 2004, because Lisbon and I believe Livermore Falls, right? Both lost their PSAPs. Lisbon and Livermore Falls both elected to keep their dispatch centers open after the 2008 report, where it showed the savings. I think that would have been, was around 2008 when Livermore Falls closed? But Lisbon, for some reason, has stayed open, service to their town. But when you talk about streamlining services, you always want, you don't want breakups in the service, you want direct links, so when they're calling 911 and there's no transfers, there's no calls lost, there's things like that. Seamless 911 is what they've routinely called it. But to find the information about where the state initiated, I wouldn't know.
That wasn't the question, it was just, how do I answer concerns where people say, from many of my 3 towns, where they're saying Lewis and Auburn chose to do this, now it's costing them money, now they want to go back, and now we're gonna pay extra. It's sort of a, you've chosen your path, follow it.
Well,
So that's the thing, and then, and that I need to know, and also where are the towns, are they all at an equal table?
I would
In these
I would use caution with that, because at the same time, I'm required to provide rural patrol, I'm required to provide civil service, I'm required to have a jail. I'm not required to have a communication center. So you could make the same argument, the county elected to keep their own going rather than join. It really doesn't hold water, because it's Lewis and Auburn that's looking to close at this point. Much like Livermore Falls closed, we took them on. Lisbon lost their PSAP, we do their PSAP for them. If they were to close, we would take them on. I do understand what you're saying. What was your second? second question, I just,
Just, are all the towns, what I keep on hearing is, this city hired a lawyer, this group's doing this. I don't hear Wales, Sabattis, Lisbon being at the
well,
table from
Auburn,
onset or currently.
Auburn would
So
hire a
that's what I
lawyer
need to
out
know
of,
if they are.
out of the interest of their partnership with Lewis and Auburn to understand their contractual obligations and how they can get out of them to help this happen and make it easier for the county to absorb. We were looking to, they're looking to close, looking to us to provide the service. So the services we're providing to Green and Turner and Livermore and whoever else, it stays the same. So now what we did is, we realized there's an impact, we have a ballpark of what that impact will be. We gave you the highest possible figure of what a budget would look like. That's where it will affect the surrounding towns. I believe it will be lower, if we ever get there, we'll get there and figure that out. So now that we've seen the potential impact and how it would impact each town based on recommendation, it's the time to get out to the communities to let them know, here's what we're coming up with, here's why we're here. But you know what, your county service that you've always had, you'll still have. It'll be under the governance of the commissioners in all those processes. So, it provides for control, it provides for control of spending, control of management, and all those things like it currently does, but it'll be a bigger operation. But now that we know what it will cost, looking at the size factor, it gives us information to actually go to the towns with, saying this is what is being considered, this may be potentially what you need to prepare for. So far, the communities we've talked to, I've talked to 2, I believe Larry might have talked to 1 unofficially. There's different feelings about it. I think overall, people that have a long history of service or that have been involved in these discussions understand there's repercussions to not doing it as well. So I don't know where you can find the information, but this has been, it started with state initiated, and at some points the conversations between the communities were ugly. When it was about, should the county close or should LACOM close? Who should control it? How should it be governed? We've gotten through all those hard parts. Now it's just the expense part,
So how do I, as a
Commissioner
commissioner, represent
Madore?
my people?
Commissioner Madore?
like you are now. You're getting the information and you're given the opportunity to ask questions, and you can respond to your
And
constituency or respond to the
influence how
town.
the outcome is?
What's that?
And influence how the outcome is in the papers that I'm not seeing?
Well, I don't appreciate, I don't appreciate misrepresentations of it, but I don't have a problem with referring to Sun Journal reports or the documentations we've provided to you that's factual. Because when something's misrepresented by accident, it's something we have to correct, which I had to go through in some towns. And then once we get over that and you set the true path, it changes the dynamic and the attitude. But sometimes if you don't catch it quick enough, it can spread and be very damaging to everybody involved,
Okay, I'm
including that.
recognizing
Including
Commissioner
the
Madore with a question for the sheriff, please.
I just, another question for the sheriff. What I want to say is, we are representatives of our constituents. So there's no there's nothing in our administration's job description to go out to our constituents, because we're the representative democracy. We represent our constituents. So when there's an issue, it's our responsibility. We can only look in the mirror to see, for who should be doing that, who should be doing constituent services. We can only look in the mirror. And so I think while the sheriff has his constituents as well, and it sounds like he's being very thorough and thoughtful about going to the municipalities that he represents and that we represent. So I commend him on doing that, because that, to me, is above and beyond.
Madam Chair, what is the question? Point of order.
No, I think we're going to move
Point
on
of
to
order.
the
It is unfair,
administrator's report.
Madam Chair.
and
I protest respectfully.
Okay.
It is
And
unfair for you to
we'll
treat me
note
this
that.
way and allow others to speak.
You've done most of the talking.
No,
so
actually, I
we're
have
going
not.
to move on.
That's an unfair
Thank you.
characterization.
Thanks for coming and appreciate the
Thanks, Sheriff.
updates and appreciate,
Commissioner Poirier had a.
you didn't get a chance to ask a question.
I'll talk to him separately, and he'll report to everybody.
I did not realize that someone did not get a chance to ask a question. I apologize. Okay, administrators report?
Okay, just very quickly, your budget meetings, as you know, start next week. Continuing to work on that 2022 budget. The total expenditures are up by about 2%. But revenues are significantly down as of right now due to overextending on using fund balance and reserves for the 2021 budget. I am awaiting the amount of state revenues for the jail. of which I anticipate and I'm hoping will be higher than last year. That should be forthcoming fairly soon, so I'm hoping to have some good news when the budget gets to you next week. I have, looked at and reviewed the dispatch proposal. I did attend a meeting with the sheriff and Commissioner Kelly last night. We are continuing to review and evaluate proposed projects for the ARPA funds. So,
Okay, thank you. Any questions for the administrator? Okay, thank you. Comments from the public, and do we have anyone on Zoom?
No, nobody's in the back.
Okay, thank you. And I don't believe we have any public here. However, department heads are certainly welcome to weigh in.
Thank you, all set.
Okay, great. Okay, old business, approval of American Rescue Funds Act expenditure project. And I think I will turn this over to the county administrator.
okay, you have seen this list before. There are a couple of changes. There is an updated number for the HVAC system for the courthouse and jail. And we provided you on Friday with that engineer's report. The employee premium pay changed somewhat. As the treasurer's office did a total individual look at those. The jail medical contract, which is eligible under the ARPA funds, because we're increasing it to 24 hours, that increase is available to be spent under those funds instead of just in the budget. The revenue loss expenditures, you've already seen the IT. We're still looking at, one of the things that can be done with that is the security and so on, where that's a guesstimate, and Doug is currently working hard to bring that up, justified up to date. The flooring and roofing, and then you've already approved the body scanner for the jail and the public safety space needs.
Is there some way we could get a mechanical concept for this? I sort of need to see how in the world it went from 2,500,000 to 6,400,000.
A big part of it, because a major part of it is simply the increase in cost from 2019 to 2021. That's a major part. The other part is we're doing, instead of, the original one did not do anything with central air. You still had air conditioners in each window, and what this one does, this one puts central air in as well. So you take, that's a majority of the increase, is simply the increase in construction cost and the increase by using central air.
We might be talking about two different proposals then, because this one that's for 25 had 7-ton of cooling and 150,000 BTUs an hour of heating. So we must be talking about two different ones.
I believe the cooling is for the jail, whereas what he's talking about, the addition is for the county building.
You've got both county and the jail. And
If
part of the increase too is the holding cells, due to the potential sickness or so on, they're individualizing some of those cells with the airflow instead of just in a general sense. And so that's increased the cost as well.
And that,
Yes.
sounds safe.
No,
I follow up that answer though. I just jump in here to, that is to reduce COVID effects and things like that?
Yeah.
Thank you.
Okay, go
When
ahead.
I'm reading it, I thought I'm reading we're gonna be doing something with the air filtration system at Lewiston Fire Station.
Okay,
So
downstairs,
why-
downstairs in EMA, we're doing some,
But
there.
we're gonna go do changes in a building that we don't own?
Mhm. We do rent it, and the air quality down there needs to be improved.
How does that work with their air quality? I guess I'm a little confused as to how you're gonna put in an air quality system just for the rooms that we occupy within
For the
fire
down,
station?
for the downstairs area where we do occupy, yes.
And the city of Lewiston does not object to us doing renovations to their building?
We've been doing renovations for the past year, and they've been applauding.
Is there a reason we can't move them here?
Yeah.
What is that reason?
We simply don't have the space, we don't have a AOC, a room where, everybody can get together when something bad happens. We just don't have the space for them at this point in this building.
How much square footage do we rent from them?
It's not an actual rent, they're allowing us to stay there because of the work that we do, also as part of the emergency management in Lewiston.
I thought earlier you just said we rent space from them. Did I not hear you correctly?
Well,
Or,
I may have misspoke, but it doesn't cost us anything to use this space.
okay, so we don't pay for the space.
Right.
You don't know how much space we use? Is that what you're telling me also?
Right off the top
How
of
many
my-
square footage, what is the square footage of space we use there?
I'll have to look. Right off the top of my head, I don't have it.
Okay, I'd be interested in knowing what we're spending for that space,
Probably about 3,000 square feet.
3,000 square feet.
Where does it say anything about the Lewiston building in here?
Well, David added that fairly recently in the proposal.
Because I did not see that.
I didn't either, so.
The Allied Engineering documentation.
This one?
Yeah.
Okay.
If you look, Androscoggin County Emergency Call Center, page 2.
Yep.
The other question I have, Larry, I made a note. In May, we spent $37,000, I think, to fix the AC unit in the county jail, or something like that, according to some previous meetings. So, is that stuff, what is happening to that? Oh, was something about a posting was done wrong? Eric reported on it. Sorry to put you on the spot, Eric, but you reported something about, something wasn't posted correctly in maintenance for the HVAC system. So are we ditching that whole system?
Something wasn't, I'm sorry, what was it? Something wasn't posted correctly?
On the HVAC system, back in May, you came back to the committee reporting something about something not being posted correctly. Something either for 37 or 17,000.
Oh, you could be talking about the heating system in the jail, maybe?
Carrying the funds over to the fiscal year, is that what you're?
They hadn't finished the project, we.
So what project, okay, I guess that's what I'm
We
going,
had-
something about a project being done to our.
We redid the heating system because it was near failure, and for some reason, they decided to piecemeal it. And it ended up delaying, but we still got the bills, although the bills were turned in late. So we had to hold the money over, because to my knowledge, the project still wasn't done.
It's not.
And is this new proposal basically
idea.
throwing that stuff out?
No.
Oh, no, that stuff remains, but they're still doing they're including the jail, because the jail was part of from what I was told, the jail was part of the original boiler project, the $2.5 million thing that was originally. So I think that's how the jail's tied in. I don't, we haven't been involved, but I think the jail was probably linked to that, or even mentioned because it was part of the original. Is that right, Ron? Boiler, am I saying it right, the boiler project?
Yeah,
It was
the
mostly
boiler
the
project.
HVAC and about Bulletin.
And the whole HVAC
Yeah.
system.
It doesn't affect what we did do that isn't done yet, but that's two different things, just in the same market.
To clarify, one more question. The Allied Engineering proposal, have you signed that agreement with them?
Not at this point, although Allied Engineering did the original one, the $2.5 million one that we did in late 2019. And so this is an extension of what they've already done.
So, if I'm understanding, when I look at this, if I go to page 8 of 14, they're looking for, part of our costs is $469,000 for their work, is that, am I understanding that correctly?
Yes.
So we're talking $5 million for the three different facilities.
They're on page 8, I believe it is. Their fee is based on $5.5 million to $6 million. So I plugged in $6 million. And if you don't spend the $6 million, we don't spend $6 million, but that's their estimate, 5.5 to 6.
That's included in this number? This full $6 million?
Yes.
Chair.
Go ahead.
I wonder if maybe, and I know we've talked about some of this before, but I wonder if we should have a whole another workshop about this topic, because I was really surprised to hear this thing about the EMA building, and honestly, I wouldn't have even known that that's what this was about if I had read that.
I'm impressed he got it. I read it and didn't even associate that with being familiar.
But maybe we could take up some of this, schedule that and take up some of these other ones individually today and talk more about them, at least to start the discussion, or maybe to vote on them.
Yeah, and if with this new one, if we could get the mechanical design, because I had someone on the last one give me the actual price, look at the design and give me what the actual parts were costing, the actual cost of the system. I'd like to take this and have him give me the same of what the actual cost of the system is, and see if we're really talking about a $4 million increase, because that seems like a lot.
Well, it does, and obviously, you go through the process and it goes to bid, and whatever the bid comes in at is fine, except that we don't have 2 or 3 years to figure out how we're gonna do this. You've got till the end of '24 to have something locked in, and till the end of '26 to have all of the projects done and over with and paid out. So that there is, and while we're not trying to rush things, at the same time, we've been talking about this thing for 2 years. And either we need to do an HVAC system or not. And so, we can argue the cost, but the cost is gonna be dependent on what the bids come in at. That's the bottom line.
I would say I think the cost is mostly dependent on the scope of the project. And I know that maybe you're a little frustrated because we have talked about it to some extent, but if none of us knew that we were gonna be spending money at the building in Lewiston, then I don't think we've talked about it enough. And a lot has been added to it since we talked about it. And so, you know, as much as I want air conditioning and to bring our offices in this building up to the 21st century standard, there's also these other priorities that we have that are still kind of being ironed out. And so I don't think we're in a hurry to do it, especially given the costs. So I think we really should talk about it more. And I don't know if maybe that's having Allied come and chat with us about it. Maybe we can, you know, very respectfully, you know, talk to them about it. And I don't know, but right now I don't think I'm particularly interested in talking about the HVAC thing more until like we have some dedicated time for it. But I see Commissioner Poirier is interested in something, so.
To that, another question about this. When you mentioned, when it states Androscoggin County Courthouse, are we doing all the floors, basement, the Historical Society, or are we just doing the two? My understanding is 4 floors. Are we, and I know we said to encompass a greater area, but how much of a greater area is this proposal looking at? Is it 4 floors or 2
As
full
far as the number of floors, and I looked through that, and I gotta check with Dave to be sure. Dave's not here tonight, he had a death in the family, but,
To that effect, I think what Noel's saying, before we go any further, we need to understand how thorough this is, because, and I have to admit, I have no knowledge of what construction costs should be. But I looked at, you know, in the paper, and I see where Target is moving into the Kmart, they're spending $9 million, and they're redoing the whole store. I'm about to spend 5.6, and all I'm getting is AC and heat.
Right.
And I love the historical building, but I'd like to understand it better, because I've gotta go back to the constituents when I run for reelection and explain to them why there's a $6,000 heating cooling system. I don't disagree with you about costs and the timeline problem. I'm just saying, we need to be able to explain it. That's all I would ask at this time.
Commissioner Kelly. I just want to say thank you to Commissioner Poirier for catching that major detail that that was overlooked. It's a big deal, and I agree with Commissioner Major. I believe that it would be beneficial to for all of us to hear from someone from Allied to understand the scope of the project and what we're spending our money on. It would be nice to see.
So I know I said I didn't want to talk about it. One more question. Does it include the courtrooms?
Yes.
Have we approached the state? Are they interested in having cooling in their courtrooms? Like, we could see, but I know generally they've been resistant to improvements, but I hear they're willing to spend a lot of money on windows. Maybe they're willing to pitch in some for something that's probably more helpful.
That would be part of probably a conversation that we're already discussing with the state, new carpeting and painting and so on in courtroom number 1. But there's one of the things with the windows, they were looking at doing that, and the price of the windows, proposed windows, came back so high that they determined not to.
Well, I think it's definitely worth talking to them about it, because maybe the thing is it's not going to happen, but for their participation in it. Maybe that's compelling to them. I don't know. They have their own budgets, and that kind of is already in motion. But we're tied to. We have a few years ahead of us potentially. So I wonder. Maybe we should. Would you chat with them about that? See how they feel.
Sure.
Madam Chair.
Yes.
Speaking to that EMA building, I have concerns if we are using ARPA funds for that, if we don't. I think maybe, I'm not a lawyer, but I would think if we were leasing it, we would have more, even if we've got the okay from any city or town to use that, I don't think we have the authority, even if we're allowed to actually go and change things around. So I would almost think that the ARPA money that went to that specific city would be used to rehab that building and not the money that came to the county. I think we better, I would recommend that we look into that carefully before we go and spend that, risking having to refund that later via the taxpayers. And also, I'm just concerned with the general medical contract. One of the things that some other commissioners have brought up, and rightly so, is building an expense that will now be fixed and built in year after year after year. I understand the logic behind it. I'm just saying, it's great we have the money now, but that runs out, and then the taxpayer will be on the hook once that 24 hours is out.
That was in the budget and we took it out. The taxpayers are going to be on the hook for that anyway, except that now we can prolong that, push it down the road a couple of years. That was in the budget.
In the budget that's being proposed,
That's
not
correct.
that, but that's different than the budget that the commissioners approve, because the commissioners have the authority to approve or change that budget. So that is something just worth noting. Thank you.
Well, sorry, Joe.
Go ahead.
What I thought was maybe we'd go through them, but maybe we could jump to number 7 and chat about that one now. And after that, we could maybe circle back to number 1.
Do you want to weigh in on that? The jail, we're skipping down to 7 to the jail medical contract.
You have a letter from the DA, and quite frankly, they were gonna have to lay somebody off on a Friday afternoon.
He's on to number 6.
Next one down. Jail.
I'm sorry, I'm looking at DA trial system.
He's looking at 6.
Okay.
Is there anybody here that'd be willing to give us a presentation on the 24-hour jail medical contract?
Jeff will do that.
Well, so I go,
Mine could give it a whack.
Larry's correct, we're gonna propose that this year anyway. Our population has reached a place where it's become a necessity. Under the recent DOC inspection, they recommended that we have 24-hour coverage, and they have for quite some time. It would probably save some cost, I don't know how much, down the road for hospital visits in the middle of the night and stuff like that. But with the amount of population we have, it's grown, we need that coverage. Our vendor did warn us at one point that when they quoted the contract, they quoted it for ADP or daily head count of 140. We're now growing to 160, 170. So that cost is probably gonna come down the road, whether we like it or not.
Commissioner Hayes?
What is the $291,000? What's that cover?
That moves from the current
12-hour coverage.
12
Yeah,
hours.
12-hour coverage.
Sorry, like the time frame. Does that cover it? Is that a year? What is that?
Yes.
Yeah, we're on a fiscal, just on a fiscal year. That would bring you up to next July.
The other thing that probably should have mentioned is, a lot of the medical issues we can confront on intake to in other words, if we have 24-hour medical available to us, they can do a triage where it could potentially deny entry into the facility, therefore we're not dealing with complications of things that enter in. Yeah, well, no, we can tell the PD, go get this guy medically cleared, because some things just aren't obvious. Where right now, we can take people in and there are risks. If we have concerns, it'll just be one more tool available to staff to come down and evaluate whether it's diabetic issues or some sort of condition they report before we bring the person in. In the middle of the night, we don't have that, so a lot of times, like Major Shu was saying, we deal with medical issues in the middle of the night, and the only thing we have available is bringing to the ER, which ties up staff, security concerns, and obviously the cost of a hospital visit. So to have not only on entrance, but while they're here, medical staff available to maybe defer from hospitals or even entrance into the facility, there could be potential cost savings and life-saving measure taken.
Do you know what we pay now for a year for 12 hours a day?
I think there is the exact number, it's 6 and change, right?
Yeah,
It's going up
six,
next-
I wanna say
687.
677.
We are one of the few jails of our size, or the only jail of our size that really doesn't have 24-hour coverage. The liability is pretty large at night. At 1, 2 in the morning, when you have corrections staff trying to triage and deal with folks, the only thing we have to our disposal is to call an ambulance. And if someone's been with us over 30 days, we own that bill. The jail with that bill, not going on.
We discussed before the liability with using police officers for, like, your blood tests, you know, and Narcan and different items. Would this take some of that liability away from,
Well, I think if you,
The
you should actually
officers can
probably
care for
continue,
that here.
hope to do away with that down the road, like the sheriff had said, when triage people before they come in, you won't have to do some of those things after. As far as Narcan, staff do carry Narcan in the facility, and if that's what you mean.
They would continue to carry that.
yeah, well, when I was on MCCA, the big deal was who can and who cannot be covered with insurance for doing blood tests. Could this person step in and do some of that for you and take that liability off of these officers?
In corrections, they don't do it, and the issue is still ongoing because MCCA's reluctance to allow police officers. That was for blood alcohol content, and there's been constitutional changes to that as well. That kind of thing doesn't happen in the jail, but with a nurse available if they need to draw blood. Corrections officers don't do it. We'd never train corrections officers to, but we have trained patrolmen to do it, so.
Okay, so that really, that issue's still gonna be
Yeah.
on.
Some of the jail standards have changed, where you have to do a full physical on folks within 14 days of coming into custody. The state's unwilling to change how that physical is done, so that's becoming more and more time consuming for our medical staff as well. So our vendor is telling us we can't continue to support this with your headcount going up. So we'd already put in the budget of 24-hour coverage, so I think what Larry's doing is offsetting that cost for a couple of years.
Sure. So how many, what's our pretrial rate right now? And then has the state started taking their own inmates at this point, or are we still waiting?
Pretrial's about the same as it always has been. Yes, the state is taking some of their people.
So about 70% pretrial?
6%, 7% pretrial.
Thank you.
That number's unchanged. But they are taking their sentence to folks. They've begun that quite a while ago.
Good, thank you.
And not looking back if you want, but.
They're still in the line, but they're taking them. In other words, we call today and they'll take them next week. It used to be we'd call today, bring them tomorrow, but they're taking them.
Thank you.
Go ahead.
When were you, say we approved it, when were you, when do you want to start? And what's the timeline on the contract? Is this a year or multiple years?
January 1st, we would like to start, and I've already been in contact with the vendor, and we can make changes as we go. We're going out to bid for that vendor next fall. So we'll still have to look at bid with them regardless, because we've extended with them so many years.
Staffing, so like how many people are we talking about? So we're gonna spend, say, $1 million on staffing or the medical coverage. How many people like per day, per night?
It should be right in front of you. I don't have the exact numbers, there's the algorithm that provided to you exactly what each proposal gives you. So
I
there's
don't
3
think
proposals.
that was provided.
No, we didn't give them that.
You have that, Larry? No. I'd have to have it in front of me, but you'd be adding 2 staff. And you'd be adding more doctor time, psych NP time, LPN time, and then a med tech time. Because currently you have a med tech for 8 hours, that person will go to 12, you'd have a nurse, follow my thinking. I can provide that algorithm to you.
And those were all hired by the vendor, the provider, not by us.
Could it go up if there are unanticipated, like how does like the all other expenses like pharmaceuticals, supplies, how does that work into the contract?
It's demand. If we have nobody that goes to the ER, the bill goes down. If we have people that go to the ER, it goes up. If we have somebody that.
Here, for the inmates here.
We have a separate pharmaceutical contract, that's separate from medical. We use Diamond Pharmaceuticals. So that's separate than medical. Obviously, the provider prescribes medicines, we have to pay for it. That's what you need. That's a separate, broken out. We're also doing a lot of more MAT treatment, because that's time consuming, so you're finding staff, the nurses and that a lot. Right? So what we're doing is we're not paying a lot of overtime currently, some of this stuff.
Question. So, I'm sorry, I don't understand all of this so far, but do we get reimbursed from the state of Maine regarding the medical costs? Or is this fully funded by?
Not specifically. It's what we get reimbursed from the state, they fund part of our jail cost,
But not specific to this one item. So if we approve this, we would be spending $349,000, or I think that's the number, which at this time we have the funds to do it. But realistically, what we're saying also is, going forward, we will have to implement that into our annual budget. And that's happening regardless of whether we have a chance to delay that cost.
Yes.
But reality of it is, that was what's gonna happen for 2022 anyways. Is that what I'm understanding? I mean, that's where the budget committee was gonna be coming to us with that proposal to have 24. So-
That's what we were gonna come to you with, yes.
So this would be, Sally, one of the things that you mentioned way back was, we wanted to spend this money but not create ongoing costs to the county. This would be one where we are, but it's also accepting what's coming down the pipe, or at least that's what I'm understanding. I mean, I guess this could be an argument made about, do we need 24/7 coverage? That really is the piece, but if we're already accepting the fact that we need 24/7, we're best to spend this money, at least for 1 year. I mean, use this money for 1 year. It's, I don't wanna say unfortunate but that cost is happening either way, if we move forward.
And I'm not sure, but I think we can get perhaps 2 years out of this, going forward a year.
Other questions?
I have a quick question that's slightly off topic, but it's still a jail. Have we heard anything about trying to get any money back from the state?
Yeah, we've heard that, we heard nothing.
Awesome.
I did check, I think it was 2 weeks ago, I notified you all, an update.
I remember the update.
Yeah,
That's why I was
no
just-
new updates since then.
Okay.
I would just tell you that in all the years I've been here, this is becoming more and more of a critical issue. The coverage thing. The state to recognize it, saying you guys are doing a great job, however, we see this as a risk. And I can tell you that it is a risk, not having medical folks there at night. We do a pretty good job of what we can do, but not having someone in the facility with the population we have, keep you up at night.
Yeah, sitting on the risk pool as long as it did, it certainly has been ongoing lawsuit in other counties over, you know.
I can present more formally, you're asking for like a presentation, I wasn't prepared tonight, but it's, jails our size don't go without this. This is something that's going to come back and bite you down the road, or bite us if you don't have that coverage.
Sure.
Yes.
Is there a way to set this up instead of a full staff, and I apologize, I don't recall all of the different, I know you said a psych, NP, psychiatric news
Right.
practitioner and others. Is there a way to set this up so that we have a sufficient coverage, perhaps during the evening or during the day, whatever is more important for protection of you know, having 24-hour, but not necessarily having full 24-hour in the sense of having full, there's someone there that has the medical experience to triage someone and say, individual so-and-so needs to see a doctor now, or this person can wait till the morning. And be able to, you know, keep those costs down for the taxpayer in that regard. I feel that could still enable staff to not have that same burden, but still keep the costs down. I guess I'd like to see if we could explore that further. And maybe you were saying that and I'm just not catching it, and if so, I apologize. recognizing on the
I'm saying
spot.
they're all pretty equally important. I mean, you're saying some of the administrative costs could be negotiated or pushed down, that what you're asking. That's something I have to talk to them about. But as far as the mental health and medical, I would say that's,
It sounds like you're saying, is there a way not to staff it 24 hours, but still have staff available?
No, more in the line of, if you're gonna have a nurse practitioner, MD, 2 nurses, and et cetera, perhaps during the night you have a nurse practitioner that has the skills to triage and do some treatment, but not the same level of treatment. I.e., there's times where, out in the force, and I'm not an officer, but, that there's not as much of a need to have as many deputies out there. And I'm not speaking for the sheriff, I'm just thinking out loud, which is dangerous. But what I'm trying to say is maybe we just have one nurse during the nighttime, so we have someone there, they can do the triage. If there is a big time emergency, we are able to still take them to the emergency room, but keeping the cost down in general. Like to explore that if possible.
Commissioner Medora?
Mr. Shute, do you anticipate any further requests of the medical providers in the building for capital needs? So if we're gonna have someone here all the time, we're talking about potentially mitigating some hospital costs and whatnot. Are there other pieces of equipment that they're gonna need to defray any of those costs or keep them busy or whatever?
no, where people leaving, some of them coming in, we can make use of the same space, which is woefully inadequate, we all see it, however, but it would still be using that same space. We've done a pretty good job of getting our equipment up to par, buying some machines to help offset that, KG machines and stuff. So the short answer is no, I don't see any capital needs because of this. We've also just completed electronic medical records system too, which will streamline all of this stuff.
Go ahead, Brian.
I'd like to make a motion to approve the jail contract, increase to 24 hours.
I second it.
To increase 24 hours, that's your, okay.
Subject.
Okay. We have a motion and a second. Any other questions? Or I actually have, and just a clarification. Here it says estimated cost. Is this the estimated cost or the estimated increase?
Estimated increase.
Okay.
One other question, Sal. Is this
Yes, go
effective
ahead.
January 1st of 2022?
Correct, and that will go into place this coming January.
I just
Do you
wanted
want
Provided we
to
get that
amend
long,
your-
yeah, we'll be able to get that. in
Your
place.
motion to make that note?
To January.
I just want clarification.
Nope, that's good.
Actually,
Appreciate it.
yeah, we're going to amend that to put that date in there.
I just have a quick question. So.
Go right ahead.
I remember all your stories about, how you would, scramble during the pandemic, say if an inmate was having a medical emergency and you didn't have enough people on the floor and you're trying to figure out how to get, inmate A to the emergency room and and still, staff the jail to, the capacity that it needs to and, trying to piecemeal it so that it all worked. I'm just curious to know how many times, a week or a month do you find that you need this, that, you would utilize this kind of service? How many times do medical emergencies pop up?
It ebbs and flows. I could give you more concrete numbers, but it happens a couple times a week.
Yeah.
When an inmate presents himself in a certain way at 2 o'clock in the morning and tells you certain things, you have no choice but to bring him to the hospital. And my hope is that we'll be able to prevent that with having another person on site. Will it stop it completely? Probably not. But will it really stem it? I think it will.
Yeah.
And the inmates know at 2 o'clock in the morning, they say a certain thing, they're going to arrive.
And in turn, it would ease the burden on, your
Yes.
corrections officers.
Because someone from the jail has to do that transport. And like the sheriff said, it's a very risky proposition to having folks out in the community, then leaving the jail short-staffed.
Well, the other part of it is oftentimes, as a supervisor, you're sitting there trying to determine the situation you're looking at from your experience or what you're seeing. So sometimes there's a delay that works, And sometimes there's a delay when the medical staff comes in at 7 o'clock or 6 o'clock in the morning, they take a quick look, say, this guy needs to go down. So it will reduce a lot of liability, which, you know, your night shift staff is gonna be appreciated for, because they'll have the professional support available to determine what's the appropriate action needed.
Our current provider takes calls 24 hours a day, but that's only a phone call from the shift supervisor saying, this person is presenting this way. And that's all we can really do as corrections officers. We can't really take vitals, we don't do any of that stuff, so. And I'll say, take a minutes from
Madam Chair.
Thank you. Go ahead. All right.
And I apologize, Major Shoot, what were the staff that were gonna be added? And are those staff gonna be 24/7, that there's gonna be a nurse practitioner, psychiatric on 24/7? Obviously, multiple staff, but is that, or are there still gonna be, some are present at some times and some are not?
No, it's going to add an RN on nursing coverage around the clock.
Okay, just one?
Just one.
Okay.
But along with that, I believe that's also adding a few hours here for the doctor the next day, or other folks too, because that's going to create more work at night and streamline things. To be able to, so that is one person, 24 hours a day.
Okay, so we're not adding,
We're going to be adding an hour
Many.
or two here to there from other people, but not adding any extra people.
okay. That is helpful, thank you.
And this nurse is provided by our provider, they're not,
Correct, correctional health partners.
let me ask you, is there any way we could do like a 5-year contract and get relief from the, I guess this is more for Clarice, with the rescue funds and pay out like a 5-year contract to sort of relieve the pressure of this for a few
I don't
years?
think you can pay in advance, no. Have to be for the specific time period of the contract.
Okay.
We've been with this company almost 5 years, so we have to go to bid next year. So whatever company we sign with, we'll be able to sign with and negotiate for up to 3 years.
Okay.
Madam Chair, I guess just given the fact that there have been some concerns, and I think, given the fact that this would be a long-term liability for the county, I think that this should be held off until the Budget Committee is presented to the budget. You know, obviously, Mr. Shute has done a Major Shute, my apologies, has done a very good job of speaking, you know, impromptu. But it would be good, I think, for us to have the full documentation ahead of time, a draft contract if there is something available, so that we can consider this and that it will be available for the Budget Committee. I don't think that, you know, the contract's not gonna go away tomorrow. I think there's ample time to get that fleshed out here by us commissioners during the next couple of budget meetings, and then by the Budget Committee, and we can still accomplish what we're needing to do.
Okay, so we have a motion and a second, and you're asking that,
I moved to
I got to reduce that down to a statement.
I'm just asking if we can,
Question to table, okay.
moving to table.
Second to the motion to table. Okay, let's go back to the original motion. If there's no other questions. Okay, all those in favor of increasing to a full-time staff, temporarily at least with the American Rescue Funds, starting January 1st, that's right? Is that right? Okay. January 2nd.
January 2nd, let's say a couple
I
times.
got it, I hear you, okay. In favor?
Point of clarification, Madam Chair, is this for just 1 year or multiple years?
I think you said that the contract will probably be 3 years, 3-year contract?
They're going to be for a 1-year contract, a calendar year contract.
Okay.
But we'll have to, we can do any extension to this company after next year, we have to go out to bid. So it'll be 1 year.
Thank you.
All in favor? Opposed?
Opposed, and I wish the minutes to reflect that I'm just concerned that there will be need to rush this. We could have taken the time to let the Budget Committee hash this out as well. Thank you.
Thanks, Commissioners.
Thank you. Thank you.
there another issue that a commissioner would like to bring up, or that Larry, you would like to address? I'll just open that up to anybody that wants to jump in there. So we're moving number 7 down to the bottom here.
Number 6, I think Larry was gonna report on that, but I think we
Okay,
should go
we
back
have
to that
letters
one.
from the DA.
He was ready for that one.
I was, apparently I couldn't tell the difference between 6 and 7. You have the trial assistant, you have a letter from the district attorney to me. They were going to have to lay somebody off that had been here for a period of time, and he explained that very well. In actuality, I said, don't lay them off, continue on, because they were way behind. And so in essence, we're a few weeks into the fact that that person is still on a payroll. And we need approval to continue.
After having read the letter from the district attorney, Andrew Robinson, and the attachments, which are page 11 and 12, clearly stating that this is appropriate, I'd like to make a motion that we accept, vote for the $50,000 request as presented.
I'll second that.
Madam Chair?
Sorry, I was reading and didn't get that. I apologize. Was your motion to accept Andrew Robinson's proposal?
Yes, yeah. Briefing, yeah,
Thank
a lot
you.
shorter than my long-winded.
And second by Commissioner Michaels. Okay,
Madam Chair?
discussion? Yes.
So, Administrator Post, you stated that they've been instructed not to lay off. What, was that because the funds had run out, or what's the?
They were afraid they were going to be, he was going to move, and is going to move from a trial assistant up to an attorney. Of course, their attorneys are paid by the state. And that was going to happen within a certain period of time, and apparently there was a delay in getting some of his information from Massachusetts and his background. And so they needed to keep him on for a period of time until that happens, so.
But is that, where is the money coming from that he's currently been extended on? Where-
Money that you're going to approve tonight.
So in other words, it was authorized or given out, dispersed without authorization from the commission?
Sure.
Do you have the authority to do that, sir, under the charter and bylaws, or the charter? I respectfully know that you do not have the authority to do that under the charter. Thank you.
Question. I believe you answered it, but I just wanted to clarify. So if Mr. Belanger comes on as an attorney, the state pays his salary, correct?
That's
It's
correct.
nothing the county has to
That's
pay.
correct.
So if we approve the 50,000, it's strictly the 50,000, we don't incur anything after that with him coming on full time?
The 50,000 is a guess as to, that's.
Correct, but I'm saying if he comes on,
That's correct.
we don't handle his
No.
salary. Okay.
Yes.
I'm sorry, just to clarify, I thought the state only paid the district attorney's salary, not the assistant district
No,
attorney's
they pay for
salaries.
all of the attorneys. We pay for the trial assistants, and they pay for all the attorneys.
We pay for the help, and they pay for the attorney's help.
Mhm.
Madam Chair?
Commissioner Levy?
What is the driver behind needing additional, I've seen the Attorney Robinson, District Attorney Robinson, submitted that information, I appreciate that, but one of the main justifications is that COVID is the need for this, whereas we've chronically had and even today, 65, 70%. It's been about that for years under both administrations. Why are we continuing to do that? And frankly, why is the state not appointing more judges? Because that seems to be the bottleneck here, not necessarily hiring more staff, which seems to be always the answer, throw more money. Both the LePage administration and the Mills administration have not appointed judges, so why is that not the case? I feel like we're trying to fix something that's actually not the county's fault.
Yeah, there's really no
That's-
answer.
there's nothing wrong with that.
Well, Mr. Post doesn't have the answer to why the state isn't hiring judges.
I didn't have that.
Commissioner?
Yeah, thank you, yeah, I was gonna say that as well. I think even your brightest minds, and people in the know in the system may all come up with different answers about, what the problem is. So, anyway, so this money is really, or keep him on until the end of the year, right? And then he gets on the state payroll?
Yeah.
Okay. And there's probably no mechanism to get him added, to jump in? Like, I don't know, I would imagine he must have to go through some sort of process to add people to the payroll through the state, right?
I think that's already approved, but he just hasn't, they're still waiting for information on his background check in Massachusetts.
So, if the state has approved or will approve the hire, I would imagine that there would be money to go along with it, right? Like that they would pay for it.
For when he becomes an attorney, yes. Mhm.
But so he works here now,
Right.
and the moment he becomes an attorney, the state will hire him.
Yes.
So the $50,000 is for now to when the background check is done?
Yeah, when his, all of the information comes through, and he then can transfer it to the state.
So we could pay less than 50?
This is kind of where I'm getting at.
Very well.
I would hope, right.
That's simply a guesstimate. I have no idea, and that simply came between my two ears, so.
I'm just wondering, I mean, if it's, for the period of time between now and then, what's his yearly salary?
I don't know off the top of my head. That was just a,
I mean,
You've got benefits.
it sounds like it's a lot more than that.
but you also can take some of the benefits and so on out of that as well, so. That was simply a guesstimate, because I don't know how long it's going to be.
Thank you.
This was an estimate after talking to Andrew Robinson for salary amounts. I mean, I appreciate you trying to say, but did you talk to Andrew as to how much?
I did not have the opportunity to do that as far as, because he doesn't know how long,
No, I understand he doesn't know how long, but if he tells you we're paying him $2,000 a week, or whatever it is, I mean, I guess you could have done a more educated guess, I guess, versus just grasping. I think what you're trying to tell me is you grasp 50,000 out of the open air without asking Mr. Robinson what the salary is that we need to cover during this time. Is that what you're telling me?
Well, you can put it in that direction, because I have no idea how long it's going to be.
No, I understand you don't
And
know
that
how long,
number is
but if
just
you,
a-
okay, I'll let it go.
Well, I'll say, just,
Go ahead.
I like the gesture, because this gentleman took the assistant job to get his feet, or his, foot through the door, and he has passed the bar, so it seems like the stars have aligned and he can be brought on. I do wonder though, like, maybe if we were to spend the money, I think doing something to help the office address the backlog is important. I'm not 100% certain that this is necessarily gonna change everything. I don't know. those are my thoughts, like, is he gonna leave? I don't know, I like the gesture though, I think it's really nice.
Okay, any other comments, or are you ready to move on, or is anyone like to make a
Just one
motion?
comment.
Sure, go right ahead.
If I could amend my motion to, the county administrator report back to us, what the actual budget amount, what we actually spend in the end, I guess. I'd appreciate knowing where we went by doing that. Because I'm assuming, I can't believe a background check will take more than the next 6 months. Maybe I'm wrong, but if it's gonna go greater, I'd love to have some progress. I don't wanna know his salary. Please understand, this is confidential information that I don't need to know. But I think it would be wise for us to know.
Yeah, you know what we spent on all of these, you know.
We will be told.
Sure.
Okay, that's all I'm looking for.
Will this show
But you're
as
still
an
voting in
increase
favor.
in
I will be voting.
DA's budget? Or will
No,
this be?
no, this will be
Will this
separate.
be dispersed out of your office, or the increase in his budget? I guess
It
that's
will
what I'm
show under,
asking.
no, it will show under the grant.
Okay, thank
So
you.
it'll be easy.
And we can, I can give you reports on what we've spent.
Okay, thanks. Thank you, I appreciate that.
Yep.
I wish when these kind of things got brought to us that you could provide more detail about what, you know, how you came up with the number and the argument to it, like, it's not really clear that this is just like a stopgap measure to try to keep him on board in the meantime until he becomes fully approved, credentialed for the state, to get on the state's payroll. And just the number overall, you know, I just wish we had more detail about it. I would almost kind of make it seem like we're just, you know, it really is like he's really a temp, but he's not really a temp. He's becoming he's becoming an attorney for the office.
It's like a holding
Full time. He's not a temp. Anyway.
And he had been, for a period of time, the assistant, trial assistant, until he took his, you know, he wanted to get into that office until he took his lawyer exam.
Yeah.
I'm sorry, I just had another thought. Once Mr. Bollinger, you know, moves on to his position as an attorney, will this come up again? Will they have to hire someone new to fill that position as a trial assistant?
That hasn't been, I haven't been approached with that.
I would think so, you know,
Absolutely.
considering it's a, you know,
They,
it's a.
some of the trial assistants deal with more than one attorney, so.
Yeah, I mean, I would think so, seeing as the need is so great as outlined in his letter here.
And on that, I could imagine there'd be a cost savings for the time that we don't have an assistant, right? So, I could see, you know, reality really costing a bit less while that is vacant, right?
I'm hoping we prove this, that he's hired on in a month and it's the end of it. And
Yes.
we get we get to keep a lot of it, so.
Yeah, it's my fear that this is going to, you know, be it's going to reappear in the budget and it's going to be a fixture. That's my feeling.
That's not the intent of the.
Okay, any other questions?
Madam Chair, I guess I'm just concerned because I'm having flashbacks in previous budget years, just flashbacks in previous budget years, that there's always emergency expenditures that have got to be done right away with little lead times. I don't think this is a good idea, and I would ask for justification on the ability of any staff to give out funds or promise funds without authorization by the commission, as we are the budgetary authority of the charter. Thank you.
Okay. Any other questions? Okay, let's move to the vote on the motion. And the motion is to designate up to 50,000, tell me if I'm right on this, designate up to 50,000 if needed, as needed, for trial assistant until he changes over to state cost. Is that?
Yes.
Okay. All right, all those in favor? Opposed?
I'm opposed, and I wish the minister to reflect the approval of the ARPA. I wish the minister to reflect I'm opposed to the approval of the ARPA expenditure projects. None of this was necessary had the government not locked down people's freedoms, violated their constitutional rights, and put millions of Americans out of work with unconstitutional methods. I consider this entire ARPA Act by the federal government fraudulent use of taxpayer money, and I would like the minister to reflect that the administrator do not have the authority to disperse or promise,
It's
as
irrelevant.
best I can
Come on.
understand. Please do
Come
not
on.
interrupt in advance
Come
without
on.
permission and authority. Authorization.
Don't waste our time.
Madam Chair, you can use the gavel on him too.
I'm asking him to stop. If he stops, then it's over. If he doesn't stop, I use the gavel, just like I did in
No.
prior meetings. All right, so let's move, is there anything else we want to bring up tonight, or are we ready to,
Madam Chair, I move to table.
This employee premium pay has been on the agenda for several meetings.
yeah, and I appreciate that.
And I think it's time to do something,
Okay, that's number 3 on your expenditure proposal.
yes.
Madam Chair, I need Commissioner.
The amount increased from 557 to 660.
No, it went down from 660 to 557.
Went down?
Yes.
So what happened? Either way, I want to know what happened to those people.
We've had people coming and going, and there were several people that had left during the period. And when Clarice, we did an estimate based on the numbers of total employees, and when Clarice did the single employee all the way through, and those who were still here and had been since the beginning, that's the number that she came up with, that the treasurer's office came up with.
So these employees, do they include salaried employees or only hourly employees?
It would be all.
So you would be included in this?
I haven't even asked about that, to be honest with you. I don't know. But
Well, how was it calculated?
Treasurer's office.
Yes, all employees were included that were here and are eligible.
We are not included, correct?
Correct.
Yes, please.
You're not sold. You didn't get enough hours, I'm
That's
sorry.
fine, no problem.
Please do not do that.
Thank you for asking that.
Okay. I mean, I view this as any one of these employees could have been eligible to get an extra $300. You know, with the extra money that was made available, if they would have decided that they were not comfortable coming into work.
At one point it was
As
6.
patrol officers, they were, was it $5 an hour?
All I have for reference is another county which paid, I believe it was $1,200 every other month, and the state of Maine which gave $5 an hour. And they got it as they were doing it, and actually Cumberland County is still compensating employees. I'm just glad you guys are dealing with it, because since it's been on the agenda, I'm the one that's gonna get the calls tomorrow about what happened. And I just say, the employees, including not even my employees, but all the general government employees, they did the work. So I'm hoping you guys can come to some sort of agreement tonight, so at least we can put the rest and move on.
So there was, you know, their counterparts have been, you know, we did not have the budget for it. And there are stories I know that I don't know about, but I know that we had staff people or a staff person that didn't feel comfortable coming in during the day, so she would come in at night and do her work so that she could be faithful to her job, but yet, and, you know, not take off work. And I think people went above and beyond in a time that was a little uncertain. If you remember back when this thing started, everybody was a little uncertain. And so, I'm completely in favor of this.
Madam Chair,
Yes.
I move we approve item 3, $557,500 for employee premium pay.
Second.
Madam Chair, I make an amendment, or propose an amendment, make a motion for an amendment to exclude all county elected officials and the administrator. I think that would be appropriate.
Why? I guess you just-
With
I don't
this-
I don't have the authorization to ask why. I'm gonna withdraw that, I'm sorry.
Thank you.
But it's part of the debate,
Second to that, to exclude elected officials. And you wanted one salary position excluded and
Yes.
all elected. Is there a second to that amendment? Okay. Any other questions or comments or, yes?
When I read through the rules in the beginning, and I saw what was going on in the county, and that, thinking back to like personal conversations with people about them working through the pandemic and their fears and you know, concerns that were definitely warranted, I felt that it was an appropriate use for some of the money, for the ARPA money. When I first was looking at the numbers, I actually thought that we should spend a lot more on it. Not in a lump sum, but over the period that we have to spend it. But with the rules having been clarified, I think that this is an appropriate number, and I think that I'm really happy, or I'll be very happy if we do recognize our employees for their hard work. And even those elected officials, that, not us, but even us too, but we're not gonna pay ourselves. But even those elected officials that are part of the county, that did work through it as well, and went above and beyond. That includes the sheriff, that includes the registrar of probate, and that includes Judge Dubois, if he meets the qualifications of the time allowed. So I'm very happy that we're going to do this, because their work went as was noted for sure.
Madam Chair.
Did you have, Ms. Claris, I have one question. It may be impossible, I understand, but I'm really troubled by, I know of a couple of employees that worked through the pandemic and now have either retired or left or for whatever reason. Is there any mechanism to legally include them in this?
As far as the grant goes, I don't believe there is anything that would stop you. It would be more of a county decision, or a commissioner decision.
They're not included in this now.
I know they're not included in this now, and they work, they put the hours in, they went through the same.
My question would be, if we're gonna do it for a couple, we'd have to keep it fair, so it would be
Yes, absolutely.
all of them, so.
Do you feel like there's more than a couple?
I don't know right off the top of my head, no.
Just, we had, because this has been on the agenda a couple times, and obviously it gained traction. The employees, Jeff's included, that meet the qualifications that did resign, we told them about this opportunity, in part to hopefully keep it at least through the summer, because it helps out whenever we take a vacation. So they knew of the potential, if that makes you feel any better. But we had an issue with one employee resigning where, because their start date is someplace else, and Hillary, or you actually weren't involved in it, when he left for Lisbon, he couldn't be in both places, so they couldn't pay him twice, which is what I was trying to tell you 2 weeks ago. If he's gone, he's no longer employed, we can't pay him, and then it conflicts with like the health insurance and the Main State retirement and all kinds of bureaucratic stuff. So, but I'm sure, I appreciate your efforts, it's just we tried to sell that to keep the employees and.
I wish there was some way, if it's not payroll, a gift of the same amount, but it doesn't sound like.
Yeah, it sounds like it may mess up other things.
It couldn't be paid by two organizations at the same time because of the retirement and health trust.
Okay. All right. I guess it is what it is.
You bring up a point. Okay, so this is gonna affect everyone's annual income, so they have to contribute more for their pension, for other things. So is this 557.5 include all those FICA, all those other costs? The 30% of benefits cost that's incurred, or is this just the gross amount going to all the employees, I guess?
This is just the gross amount.
Okay, so the actual expenditure that we will be able to charge is gonna be greater than that.
Yeah, because we can, any of the deductions and benefits, we can also move over to it, yeah.
Could we have an accounting of that, just so we know what the pot of money is? Because we've got 10 million right now.
Mhm.
Today, we're not subtracting only 557,000. We're actually subtracting another approximately, I'm gonna say 30% more.
So,
Okay.
do we really need that amount before we vote on it?
No, I don't
You
need
just
it,
want to.
but I want, so that we know how much money we have going forward, if we could have a running total each month,
Oh, yeah, I'm gonna give you a report.
that would be ideal, because right now, I don't know how much money we have left. I
We will
don't see
give you-
a calculator.
I feel like we're spending willy-nilly.
Oh, I just wanna know.
Sure.
So, we're saying we have to vote on this 5,700, and we understand it's gonna be some more. Correct.
Yeah, and I have no problem with that.
I'm talking
I
about my
just-
softwares.
Yeah, no, that's right, consideration for sure.
If all.
Kind of the same reason I asked about the 50K.
Yeah, and for
But
this.
we, out of $20 million, we still have some left.
I realize that, but you also told me we needed 6.4 million for an AC unit, heating. And
Sure.
You scared the bejeebus out of me.
Okay, are we ready to move forward on a vote on this issue? Or is there any other questions or comments? Okay, all those in favor of moving forward, authorizing the treasurer to move forward on the employee premium pay? Okay, and opposed?
I'm opposed, and I wish the minister would reflect we should know how much this costs before we approve it. And every person that worked in a job pumping gas at a gas station didn't get this kind of a benefit, and they had some of the same risks. Thank you. I wish the minister would reflect that.
Sure.
Anything else, or are we ready to arrest it tonight?
I have more energy.
Okay.
So if other people do, I see what I would imagine is a relatively small one, and that is the accounting software. So if other people would entertain me, and if the treasurer would be willing, I would be more than happy to hear about that.
I would love to talk about my software.
Okay.
So just, I don't know if any of you, some of you may have heard about me talk about my software. It was set up not to be very user-friendly, and that's putting it very nicely. Where it is a problem now is, and I'll try not to get too technical, but the current database, the current software we have right now is database driven. What that means is every year of the county is on a different database. And every year of the jail is in a, again, different database. So I can't run reports from, like, say, this is a grant that's gonna run, I think it's gonna be March, or some stupid thing, but it's gonna be, it's gonna be with not our January to December, in other words. So in order to give you numbers, I'm gonna have to run out of separate database years and put it all in a spreadsheet. The software I'm looking at is date-driven. It's all one database, but I can run this grant, and then this is gonna be a bear if this don't happen, because it's several years. I can run it from the beginning of the contract, the grant, to the date that I'm reporting in one report, one database. And just off the side, because the jail is July to June, we have to do this every year for the audit, because the jail and the county are in different years in different databases. So I'm in a spreadsheet, putting the county and adding it to the jail from July to June in one year, and January to, it's two different years. So this will correct that, and it will make it reporting so much easier in all the grants we have, because we do have some July to June grants as well. The jail and this bear of a grant that's we're gonna have a lot of reporting for. So.
Yes, Commissioner.
If we approve it, how quick could you get it?
Really quick. We can get it really quick.
So this isn't
It's
something
gonna
you have
take-
to wait?
No, I don't think so. It's gonna take some time implementing it correctly. So probably 6 months to implement it, to get it to be as
Comfortable operating?
that, and to get the best system that we can get, the software I'm looking at, I've used before and I've implemented before, and I know what the tricks are to get the most flexibility out of it, to do what we need to do. So that's why I'm looking at this one first. I will look at others, because it's a grant, I have to do two more quotes. But this by far is the one I know, and I know it will do what we need to do with all the different years.
Commissioner Ford.
The conversion, as you just stated, is gonna take 6 months. When you're buying this software, do they by any chance offer a service where they'll help you with that conversion?
Yes,
So that we
and
can move
that's
it?
in the cost.
That's even with their assistance, it's still gonna take you 6
Yep,
months to
that
get there.
includes training and what do you call it, data.
Migration.
Yeah.
Data migration. The next question is annual costs of our current software compared to the annual cost of this software.
Within about $500, the same. And it, actually, if I remember right, it was $500 lower than what we're paying right now.
I'm smiling even better.
Yeah.
I'm just wondering, what's it called? What's the name of it?
The software I'm looking at, but again, I have to look at two more just because it's federal grant. It's called MIP, and it's a fund accounting software, which is doable because we have different funds. The company is Abilla. It used to be a Sage product. I don't know if you've heard of Sage. They're very popular. This branch of it got bought out by a company called Abilla. It's very popular among nonprofits because of the grant function. But it will work nicely with incorporating the jail in with the county. We'll even be able to do one check run for each. You won't have as many warrants.
Your current software, now, how old is it and what was it designed for?
I wasn't here at that time, otherwise I would have set it up much differently. But as far as I understand, it was brought on in 2015, I believe, because they came from a DOS base, if I understand correctly.
When I started, that's what was the change.
Yeah. Yeah, I didn't start till 18, I want to make that clear, 2018, I wasn't here.
So it was DOS prior to that?
I believe so, yes,
Oh,
it was called FunSense, and it was horrible.
And did I remember right that it was designed for, like a school district?
Oh, yes, I forgot to mention that. The software we currently have, we are the only county in the East Coast that actually has this software because it was designed for schools. So, and why we decided to get a school one, I have no idea. The Cadillac to it, Munis, is very popular among cities and towns and stuff, but it's very expensive. It's more expensive than what we're asking.
Commissioner Poirier and then Commissioner Kelly.
So because you said you need to get 2 other proposals, are we not able to vote? I mean,
No,
because we really need to see the other 2 proposals, don't we?
I honestly don't think there's gonna be other software that does all of this that we need because we are a county and we have grants. I mean, you're gonna either find one that does one or the other, but this one's gonna do both. So I'm pretty confident that this is the one we're gonna have to go with. I say have to because
Yeah, and I don't have a problem listening to your recommendations, because you're the one that's working 40 hours plus. And I do not want to do your job.
You sure?
But,
You can.
but I want to make sure that we're within the compliance
Yep.
of the reg, or whatever this thing is called.
We will be.
So will you need our final approval on the software contract, or is that something that the administration will be able to sign for?
I'm assuming, not seeing the contract, but I'm assuming that I would be able to do that because you approved the go ahead.
Spend.
What we should do is like approve up to a certain
Exactly.
Yeah.
Is there a motion on the table?
I do, would you be happy with a motion that was worded like that?
Yes.
Approve it up to a certain amount?
Yes, I would, absolutely.
Okay. I was just going to make a motion.
Okay, go ahead.
Chair, I'd like to make a motion to approve the treasurer's office seeking out a new software system up to $70,540, utilizing the ARPA funds.
I second.
Commissioner, if I could give a little bit of leeway there for price increases between now and next month, like if you could go to 75 and then,
Everyone okay with that?
Yeah. It's your motion.
All right,
You
so
have the other one.
I'll same motion, but I would like to raise the amount to $75,000.
I second that motion.
Any other comments or questions? I feel like this is what we've been looking for, is ways to improve the county, to be a benefit to the county, and not an ongoing expense, but an ongoing benefit. This seems like it fits the bill perfectly.
I'm just shocked that you're using DOS until 2015. Commodore 64.
Okay, any other comments? Commissioner Madore?
My only thought is that if there are potentially add-ons that you see that could save staff time that are in the package software and that goes beyond that, I would encourage you to come back and ask us for more, because I see that as something that could be really helpful to get more staff time and get more out of the program than this. I would imagine it'll be a minor change overall.
Any other comments or questions? Okay, I guess we are ready to take a vote. All those in favor of authorizing the treasurer and administrator to spend up to $75,000 on new accounting software for the treasurer's office? Opposed?
Opposed. I recognize the benefit of it, but I have to be opposed.
Okay.
No, sorry, one more thing. If I would have resaid that, I probably would have said something about not signing us into really expensive yearly fees, but I think you already have that on your mind, so I won't have that here.
Okay. Anything else that you want to take on this evening, or have you had enough on your plate? Go right ahead. Yeah.
I do see that the registrar of probate is here. And, you know, just because we bring it up doesn't mean we're tied to having a vote on it. So, and I don't know if he's ready, but, you know, maybe we could chat about that too, why not? We don't get to see his face every day, so.
Let's consider it, yes, and not make him come back.
Happy to talk about it, sure. I don't know if Larry wants to
I'll chime in at the public
chime in.
now.
You're a chap. So, the project overall, it's been a work in progress over the past, well, since I've been here, so this is like year number 5. And we are, the impetus of it all is that we're at capacity, and bulging at capacity for the storage of our records, which, you know, go back to the inception of the county. And last year, we, the funding for the reinforcement of the floor, paving the way to be able to accommodate the new shelving unit was done. And I believe you and the budget committee allocated $50,000, and so that's been done. And so, if not in utilizing the COVID funds available, then we would propose it in the annual budget. Proposal for 2022. So.
Essentially, the biggest thing that this will do is to move things around so that they have more space, which is one of the things that you can spend this money on.
Does your proposal include, I see workstations, does it include changing the customer and staff interface area for security, you know, from its, you know, sort of old-fashioned to today's standards, or?
No. I mean, because we're limited as far as the space that we have. So the shelving, the footprint of the shelving is going to be pretty much where the existing shelving is, all those tri-fold drawers, except there will be rolling shelving, there's more space in between the aisles. But, you know, the counter, I mean, that still serves well for the actual daily operations of serving the public. The incorporating the workstations made sense to me, as that aspect of it is $9,000. The workstations haven't been updated since, I want to say, somewhere around the 80s, and that's a guesstimate. You know, I don't have any factual data information to substantiate that. It made sense to me to include that nominal amount in this overall larger project, whereas the workstations are not compliant, I don't want to say compliant, but adequately servicing the staff with what's the word, for ergonomics and whatnot. And in fact, like our clerk's desk, part of the laminate is like broken off and it's sticking up, and there's a sharp edge there, you know, and things like that. So it's an improvement that's been put off for a long time now, and so that's why I included that in there. Also in the proposal is the flooring. And it made also sense to me that if you are doing such a major renovation project like that, that an old outdated flooring, this would be the time to do that as well.
I was surprised at how little that number is for the flooring. Is that like a real quote or is that a guess?
That's a guesstimate, I think a realistic guesstimate, provided, I worked with Dave Cody to, ascertain, because the flooring, not my wheelhouse at all.
Where are you gonna go in the meantime if they're working on it?
Well, and logistics, so there, the staff and myself, we've started holding these conversations, but, there's a lot of logistics to work out. And it's, so in my organizing of a project like that, I kind of think of it in a couple of different ways. One, from the date of completion forward, where you are now, and everything that has to transpire, what are all the goalposts along the way? And, for us, we're serving the public, so that has to get, continue to go on. And, we've started having conversations, and I feel confident that we'll make it happen. But it is a big project, to be sure.
I feel like last time I went there, one thing I noted was that one of their workstations was like 3 desks put together, seemingly different heights. That was my impression from what I saw. Of different decades too, not even like the same decade, but like maybe a 1960 and an 80 and like a 90s desk. That's what I remember.
Yeah, and Commissioner, we're talking like old tables that, are below the window, where typewriters are, and other like telephones and, copiers and stuff like that. We jokingly refer to it as like the, some pieces as like yard sale items, caliber, And again, it's improvements or updates that haven't happened in decades. And so I feel like it's time. I think it's important for the staff who work there day in and day out, as they have, like Julie, our deputy register. She's been there for 10 years. Sharon, I think this is, I want to say her 4th year, or if not, pushing 5th. And so I think that we owe it to them to provide them the best working stations that we can for the amount of time they spend here every year. Yes, ma'am.
Just your 5-year plan over the years had just a little under $200,000 added for windows. And it seems like at this time with this money, replacing the windows would be an added benefit for years to come. And that's the kind of projects we're looking for. What was the thinking of taking that out of your 5-year budget here in April?
I think that was going to be placed elsewhere in other budgets, like I think Dave's budget.
So you're
Then it
taking
would
out
go
of your
into-
capital, 5-year capital plan and putting
Right,
it as
yeah.
Then that makes sense,
Yeah.
okay.
Any other questions?
Madam Chair?
Yes.
So from what it looks like, you're rolling the 5-year capital plan, year 2021, into the ARPA, or COVID-19 economic relief. Because I see Provost Office 5-year capital plan, $156,734 under the COVID-19 economic relief. And then the next page, I see the total proposed 5-year capital plan, $156,734. Is that?
What's your question?
What's going on there? One's a 5-year capital plan, now all of a sudden I see it in the
Right,
COVID-19
all right, so
economic relief, so that it doesn't jive with me.
As we
it
were
makes sense.
approaching the budget, 2022 budget
Yeah.
process, I didn't know if this was gonna fall under the purview of the COVID plan. And so if it's not, I incorporated it in my proposal for 2022, just in case.
But you're rolling 5 years into one, by the looks of it, correct?
It's a project that, I was asked to put forth a capital plan. It's, it's called the 5-year plan, but that's what I put forth, and that's what I'm asking for.
And we're confident that that meets the ARPA requirements? Okay. And then another question, I certainly understand that the need for some reasonable desk and ergonomics. My question is, are you just talking desks? Because $9,000 for 2 employees is incredibly high. I mean, I can see a desk being $1,500. Are we talking about computers as well? Because I can't fathom $9,000 for 2 employees' workstations.
No, and it's the whole work, it's not just the deputy and the deputy register and the clerk's workstations, but it's the whole back end of that office. It includes the judges, where, by the deputy register, where he has his space. And I brought in somebody a couple of years ago, a representative from WB Mason, to do a mock-up, to find out. And that's, it's nothing extravagant or exorbitant, but it's a realistic plan of what would make it work. And if you come down and visit, I'd be happy to just identify for you, for Julie, every time somebody comes to the counter, she has to get up and walk around her desk. And she's always happy to be getting her steps, but I think there's other ways that somebody would prefer to be doing that. But whereas for Sharon, it's just a straight shot, and then, for any time that Julie has to get up, it's not a well-designed
Certainly not a
setup.
question of the employees, but it says clerk and deputy department register workstations, so it just indicates to me there's just 2. So we should clarify that if we're actually gonna vote forwards on this, because that would cost for more than,
Well,
that's an awful lot of money for 2 people. You're saying 3, I don't know if you're saying 4 or 5? I just think it should be more clear on that.
I'd be happy to clarify that for you, but for our purposes right now, what I'm expressing to you is that it's not just the deputy and the deputy register, but it's the judge, it's my working there, it's the whole workstation, or work area that is utilizing, that facilitates everybody doing the work that's needed to be done on behalf of our taxpayers.
Yeah, the way I remember it is, sure, they have their desk, but they also have lots of working spaces for all the different things that they have to do. So even though I would hope this money does not include any typewriters, they have to have some typewriter space, they have to have all the blank documents to help people. They gotta, there's just a lot of real estate table space that they require.
It does acquire a lot of space, and part of the issue, not to be redundant, is that the space that they have does not meet ergonomic ideals that we would want for our staff. But we're not buying typewriters, we're not buying computers, we're not buying printers, we have all that. But it is a matter of the stations themselves. And I, looking at, if you'd like to, view the plans, I'd be happy to show you them. But they, they're not exorbitant, they're realistic functioning workspaces.
I'm just doing the math, and that comes up to about $2,300 per person. It's still pretty high.
And I would encourage you to think about it as a work area that incorporates 2 workstations and a judge and a register. I have my office as well. But yeah, if you shift your thinking, away from just 2 people to the actual work that, with all of us that takes place there.
Sure, that's why I'm still coming out with that 2,200 number, so that concerns me.
That's okay.
You can get ergonomic without that price.
Okay.
Chair, I am satisfied with what's presented. I would feel comfortable voting on this tonight, if others would. Well, I don't want to make a motion because I don't want us to vote no, and that to be the message is we're saying no. I'm wondering if people are. Feel about
I'm fine with it.
Okay, well, Chair, I'd like to make a motion to approve the Register of Probate's proposal here to use $156,734 of.
The total's 173, 134.
Oh,
What's
other
the
side.
31,
There's two,
34?
there's two
Sorry.
things.
Oh, I'm sorry. Okay, let me take that back. I'd like to make a motion to approve Registrar's plan, spending $173,134,000 of ARPA money to, on the probate office.
Second.
Madam Chair, I request that we amend that, we make a motion to amend to clarify that the clerk and deputy register workstations are actually, to strike that and say 4 workstations, and to remove the court bench witness stand, or to lower the court bench witness stand to $3,000 instead of $12,000.
And lower the court bench.
Witness stand from $12,000 to $3,000. It's just way too much. Thank you.
Okay, a second on that. Amendment. Okay, see, no second. Any other questions, or, I guess I have one, if there is, if it happens that we are not going to use the downstairs any longer for offices, but use it for storage, does that change your file storage situation or expenses at all?
No.
Madam Chair, I think I would just urge the commission to at least consider clarifying that the clerk and deputy registration stations are 4. Otherwise, I feel that if we are ever audited, the look will be to only purchasing 2. So I think we should be clear as to what we are authorizing expenditures for. Thank you.
Clerk and deputy rep.
It's on the second page, under the 5-year capital plan. I know.
Okay, a second to that amendment. Okay, seeing no second, is everyone ready to vote, or are there any other questions or comments? Okay, all those in favor? Okay, opposed?
I'm opposed, and I request the minister reflect we should be very clear on what those expenditures are for.
Thank you, folks.
Thank you. Excited to see
Thank
the
you.
new improvements. In the long run, this will save us from having to put this in our budget.
Before I leave, I just want to thank you on behalf of the employees too. I know it's going to be much appreciated.
Absolutely.
Thank you.
Thanks, guys.
Thank you, Chair. Thank you, Megan.
Madam Chair, I move to table this agenda item. I have respect to the treasurer staff here. I move to table this agenda item, this agenda item that we've been working through out of respect for the treasurer staff here.
Okay. I guess we have a motion to table it. We can, you can table it, or we can just move on, you know.
I second the motion to table.
Okay.
What are we taking?
We're going to move on and not discuss anymore.
Table the remainder
Table
until.
table further discussion.
I second.
Okay.
We did quite a bit.
Yes.
Yeah.
Discussion. Okay, all those in favor of tabling any further discussion on the American Rescue Plan expenditures? Okay, 0. Nobody's hungry. All right, so we are, I know where my regular agenda is here. Here we go. Discussion items.
The risk pool?
Oh, yes, appoint risk pool, MCCA risk pool. Do we have any nominations? I guess, all right.
I move we appoint to the Maine County Commission Association risk pool, Prince George Valley County of Governments, Commissioner Porter.
You don't fall asleep there, you can get in some trouble, goes off on it.
Well, let me try to sell it on him
We-
here.
Well,
I can try to
I
sell
will
it.
certainly give you a chance to, is there a second to that, and then we'll find out if this is something he's at all interested in doing yet. We're not gonna railroad you, if that makes you feel any better. Is this a position you would be interested in?
I don't know what this involves as far as time consideration.
Once a month for the risk pool. And they combine the risk pool meetings and the MCCA together. So the risk pool meeting is a closed door, private meeting for the first, usually takes 30, 45 minutes, where they go through all the lawsuits. Is it taking longer those days? or-
I would say total between the two, it's about 7 hours a month, of which on one Wednesday a month, you meet in Augusta or virtually, they've been doing it virtually these days, between 8 o'clock and like 1.
And they bring in lunch at 12, so you'd be surprised, once they start setting up the lunch, everybody's done talking about issues. It's sort of amazing how it goes that way.
They're all of a similar age as you too, if that makes you feel comfortable. It's interesting, and if whoever can't go, Larry is the alternate and can vote for Androscoggin County.
So if you were able to make it, he would vote your proxy.
How long is this position for? How long am I being?
Till you leave. Yearly.
We vote on it.
Till the end of the calendar year?
Every January.
If you found you needed to step down, of course, you're not signing on the dotted line.
Actually, Madam Chair, this particular appointment would be until January 1st, because you could be replacing Commissioner Medora.
I'll-
Sucker.
Yeah.
Don't listen to him. I think
I'll talk to you
I
off the
really
record.
enjoyed it.
No, it's good,
Don't
it's
listen,
good.
I enjoyed the meetings, I especially enjoyed the risk pool meetings. The bad thing is you can't ever discuss them afterwards, but they're very interesting.
You'll let me make this.
All right, thank you.
Did you vote on
Do you
that?
hold a vote?
Oh, we did not vote, you're right, we did not vote, thank you. All right, all in favor of, Commissioner Foyer, taking over for the rest of the year for Commissioner Medor. Are you abstaining or are you against?
I'm abstaining. I'm not voting for yourself.
And thank you, Commissioner Medor, I know that you did it for years, so that is a little bit of a sacrifice, that going up, driving up to Augusta. Although, do you agree, it's really interesting to know?
I do find the risk pool way more fascinating. Talking about all the lawsuits and how they're gonna handle them. And the guy who runs the show, Malcolm, is just a wealth of knowledge. And it's not just about lawsuits, it's about risk and money. And it's a fascinating conversation.
And you're actually one of 14 votes on the legislative agenda for counties. You're one of 14 votes on going forward with lawsuits or not. I mean, it's a weighty, you feel like you're making a difference. Did we convince you? It's a wonderful.
For the moment,
You'll do great.
silent.
As for the association, it's different.
Discussion items. Any commissioners have a discussion item they would like to use the meeting to discuss? Yes.
Going back, and I'm sorry Clarice left before we could talk about this, but the audited financial reports that we got last month, I thought we said something to the effect that we were gonna follow up on it at this meeting. And maybe I'm incorrect. But do we have to accept the auditor's report or accept it as filed or something? Is there a
There's both ways. To be honest with you, I'm not sure that we ever have here. I've seen it
We'll
done
put
both
it on the
ways.
agenda for next week to report.
Okay.
Because I think we did say we wanted to put it
Okay.
off a week so everybody had a chance to read it over, but I forgot to put it in my notes, or I would have told her too, so I
And
will
the other
write it down
thing-
right now.
And the other thing is concerning the OPEB liability, I know I had a discussion with the auditor regarding the actuary versus, if you could find out for me how this, why we would spend $5,000, how that's gonna affect the budget going forward, because
It isn't going to affect the budget. What it does, first thing it did was bother me when I looked at suddenly, we owe $30 million that
that's a contingent liability.
it's, and I don't think it's right. I think it's wrong, because it seemed it increased dramatically from just a few years ago. And I haven't seen the actual, how they arrived at those numbers. But I'm not sure that I'm willing to spend $5,000 to.
Well, that's what I'm gonna tell you. I mean, I'm not an actuary, but I did work with asset liability management, and you're working with projections, and I can make any, I don't wanna say any projection sheet come out the way I want. But if it's not gonna affect us financially, unless we spend $5,000 to get somebody that's gonna make me feel good,
Yeah.
I really see no logic to do that expenditure. And I understand they're trying to do their best guess estimate of healthcare costs. And I have to admit, I don't know how you can get that one these days.
We're not gonna write them a check next week.
But if it's not affecting the county budget that we're gonna go to the taxpayers with, I say save $5,000 and, you know, yeah, you don't like the look of it, but move on.
I hear you. I hear you.
I mean, because the only thing I understand is it's similar to what the US Post Office is faced with. They're being told that they have to account for the expenditure of their pension plan, and that's why they're running, part of the reason they're running into a deficit. There's a lot more to that, but we'll just go there for the moment. But if we're not doing that, then save ourselves headaches, don't go there.
Well, I got a question about it. Maybe one of you could explain, or anybody. But like, so I comprehend the value, like, and coming up with a value in healthcare. Like, I get that, and I understand it's a liability out there. But the year-to-year cost for us is really just the actual healthcare costs, right?
That's what I mean.
And so they're kind of saying like, if they do keep going up, then maybe you're gonna have to raise a lot more money to pay for it, right?
I mean, the thing that we've done is we've eliminated covering employees that retire, which is part of our, I don't want to say problem, but this cost continues as long as these people live.
Right.
And we have no way of knowing if, are we paying them a set amount towards their insurance costs, or are we paying them, their total insurance health costs?
In most cases, those that have been retired long enough so that they're over 65, what we do, we pick up their portion of the Medicare.
Okay, because I was looking at the budget, and we spend like, we give I've seen names of people that, as far as I know, were associated with the county, and they seem to be getting $200 monthly. What is that?
Yeah, or I think it's a little bit less than that, but yeah, that's right.
Okay, but that's a fixed amount?
Yes.
Or, well, it's not fixed. You're
Well,
telling me
it
it's
changes every year according to the,
Medicare.
yeah.
It would be
And then
interesting.
there would be some that would have retired and aren't age 65 that we still pick up there.
It'd be interesting to know if they incorporated the life expectancy drop in their forecast. I feel like that probably came out after they did it. Good.
I agree with you, but so let it be what it is. I'm sorry, Larry, but I don't feel
understand.
bad, but I feel bad if I have to spend $5,000.
I fully understand. The major part though is if somebody from outside reads that and looks, that's $30 million in the hole, when in actuality, you know, we're not. But, and if that OPEB document suddenly, because it's part of the GASB 70-something, takes up half the audit report now for no good reason, but no, I understand. And when I did ask about it because I said that number looks wrong to me, and so that's when
Yeah.
he made the recommendation, but.
Yeah, no, I commend you for looking at it and questioning it. I just don't want to spend my money.
Yeah, I hear you.
To make you feel better.
I have Mr. County discussion. The parade, is that scheduled for the end of this month still?
Yes.
It's scheduled for the 21st.
Are we
Quite
taking
frankly,
part?
the sheriff department, we're having some cruises in and so on.
Are we taking part also?
We're not getting any employee. Last year, things were good, and people were ready to move and be part of it. This year, not so much.
Well, maybe they'll turn around once they hear that we're giving them money, okay? I would hope they can get some enthusiasm for this place.
Bring out the cougar.
It's
We had a-
not
we had a
just
footnote
here,
to
I
that,
think
yeah.
we've seen that
Yeah.
across the board, sort of malaise and whatnot.
Participation required. Because
Hand out the checks during the parade.
Trouble is, if you require participation, then you gotta pay them.
That's right.
Yeah, bring out the cougar. That'll be great.
Madam Chair?
Really?
Madam Chair? Right, Larry, so what do you get for feedback on the parade? Is it coming together, is it gonna be fun?
I-
know.
Here's what I've heard. I've heard that, I shouldn't say what I've heard on, but I think they're getting a lot of people not responding back, and there were an agency in the state that should have been apprised of what's coming that apparently have been left out of the loop somewhere along the way. So I'm not sure what's going on, to be honest with you. That has not been, I haven't been involved in that.
Any other discussion before we move on to future agenda items?
Sure, Madam Chair.
Yes.
Just have some concerns here, and given your email said that we would be able to shed light on things and raise issues at this time. Your email that stated, I won't read the whole thing, but just a heads up that for the duration of my tenure as chair, I will not be placing any of the items on the agenda that are not a function of county commissioner's purview. I would just like to state county commissioner's purview is dangerously vague, and since you referenced last meeting, I'm not sure, and I cannot judge intent, I can just say I'm not sure if you believe that the Cuban Freedom Resolution is outside of the commissioner's purview, as that was the only thing that was claimed to be outside of our purview by another commissioner at that meeting. I would just like to state that our oath of office, swearing to uphold the Constitution, means that we must speak out in support of all people's rights regardless of nationality. Your statement in that email, from reading that and reading the bylaws, is in direct violation of the bylaws, section 14, item for meetings 2. The chair may, in consultation with the county administrator, use his/her discretion in placing and scheduling items for the agenda, provided the chair may not unreasonably delay placing items on the agenda requested by other commissioners. Perhaps this was an error, because otherwise the statement you made in the email stating an anticipated potential action by the chair to directly violate the bylaws. So I would ask you to either retract your email or further clarify what your intent is.
I stand by the email, and if the board would like to move on that, they're welcome to. Our bylaws have been amended to give the board override, since the original bylaws, it was amended to give the board a chance to override a decision, not to put an item on the agenda. And in my email, I also spelled out how you could override, and if you chose to override, I would actually step back and not vote or oppose it. I This is a board, and I will respect if the board wants to go forward with a issue that is not part of the board. And so that's basically all I'm gonna say on it. I will not be retracting the email. If the board wants to make a move, I'm certainly okay with that. It's a board organization.
Madam Chair, the intent of that was to address issues where a chair in the past repeatedly did not add things onto the agenda on a reasonable time. The intent, and reading both of those sections, one, the override mechanism that you referenced, does not give the chair the ability to ignore the requirement that any chair is required to reasonably, under a reasonable time, place an item on the agenda. So therefore, that the intent of that to say that the board has the ability to override does not nullify the chair's responsibility to obey the bylaws in all cases.
Madam Chair,
Yes.
the bylaws say that the chair should not unreasonably withhold agenda items, but I think the chair has ample reasons as to not place things on the ballot that the commission has no authority to pass and affect any force of law.
We had, I would just claim, a state opposing the unconstitutional mask mandates. We had the authority to address that by putting forth an important question to the Supreme Court of the state of Maine, because there is precedent for doing such a thing. There was a committee that did such in 1880, dealing with a very difficult constitutional question on elections. Vaccine passports are in our bailiwick because if those are allowed, and I see a sign on the door from the state, if those are allowed, that is policy that is in our department, as well as our oath of office gives us the authority to speak out in favor of all people's freedoms. Because when we defend freedom here or there, we defend freedom for our constituents as well.
Madam Chair, the amendment to the bylaws gave the commission the authority to place items on the agenda by a request of 4 commissioners. This can be done any time, and that's not a majority. That's just enough to show critical mass, putting something on the agenda, and any commissioner can go and get 4 people and talk about anything, really.
True, but that basically relegates it to a straw poll vote ahead of time. And then if anyone decides to not allow information on or to be discussed, once again, it's squelched. So it's not, the intent of that bylaw change was not to allow the chair to not follow the other bylaw. Both are controlling, and whichever is more restrictive is still controlling, even if there's an option, a circuit breaker, if you will, for the commission to address that. And it's important for us to do that.
Correction, the requirement is 3 commissioners to something, but 4 would be passive.
Commissioner Haynes.
I stand by your email and support it.
I do as well.
I think since the email has come up in public, you have, am I right about that, where this has been discussed? I think you have the right to have a copy of that, so I will forward it to you tomorrow.
Madam Chair, I do need a point of order though. The bylaws actually state that any agenda item shall also be placed on the next meeting's agenda upon a vote of 4 or more board members. That's what the amendment states.
Does it say 4 or more?
4 or more board members, so that should be noted. And that the whole purpose, the whole reason, without going into all the details, where there was many nasty fights over things getting added to the agenda, and this was a direct result of some of those in trying to prevent that from being in the future. It was not to give the chair more latitude, it was reduce the latitude if the chair so chose to ignore that. And I would just also state that we have violated the bylaws multiple times tonight while discussing items before there's been motion and second. Whereas when I brought up the vaccine passport, you did not want me to say anything except, or the anti-vaccine passport, you wanted me to say nothing in support of my motion except for the motion itself, while others, including staff, including any other commissioner, have been allowed to talk at length on any of these issues before motion and second. So, Madam Chair, respectfully, you need to be consistent in your application of the bylaws and not just against me. You've allowed others to interrupt me many times, and I respectfully protest, and I do not feel it's fair. It is not fair.
I think we're ready to move on to agenda items. I I will say, I do take correction on the fact that when we were discussing the items on the American Rescue Plan, I recognize I did allow some conversation before a motion was made, so I'll have to look into that. That's a valid criticism.
I don't see anything wrong with that personally. It was valid discussion
Commissioner Poirier?
prior to the motion.
Oh, I'm
Certainly
sorry,
mine
I
would be
think, I already called on you.
Certainly
No,
mine.
okay,
I think
please,
that's-
please, Commissioner, I called on Commissioner Poirier, please.
Future agenda item.
Oh,
Harriman Associates would like to come to
Yeah.
next month's, not next month, next meeting to report. So I don't know if I need to tell
I'm
you,
glad
or
you
does
said
that
that.
just happen? I'm not sure, but we need to have them on the agenda.
Yeah, I was
Yeah,
thinking about that
Sheriff
driving
mentioned
in.
that to me today, so.
Thank you.
Because they have a report to
How
give
about
the
that?
commissioners.
Yeah, I was actually thinking about that in the car driving in. I'm so glad you brought that up. Yes, we'll make sure that is on the agenda. Any other agenda items?
Sure, Madam Chair. This is completely in the bylaws purview, so there's no way to wiggle out of it. The chair may be removed or replaced at any time by a vote of 4 members. I request that that be added to the agenda. Thank you.
Okay. Vote to remove the chair.
He wants to bring back that issue. Which
No,
section was it?
he's asking for a vote to remove the chair.
Oh, to remove the chair. Or to remove the item.
Due to ignoring the bureau
Oh,
bylaws.
I see.
Thank you.
Yeah, okay.
Motion to adjourn.
Second?
I'd like to amend that motion, that the chair does not get to vote in favor of the motion.
Please. All right, thank you, everyone.
I didn't vote for that.
Oh,
Okay, we're
do
good.
you want to go home, everybody?
Well,
All right, thank you, have a nice evening.
thank you.